When cities expand, one of the biggest challenges they face is traffic congestion. Some solve it by building new roads, others by adding bridges and tunnels. While these measures help, they don't always go far enough, especially in cities like Norfolk and Hampton, Virginia. Here, managing traffic isn't just complicated, it's enormously expensive. The solution currently underway is expected to cost close to $4 billion. It involves removing millions of cubic feet of earth, rebuilding much of the existing infrastructure, and deploying a one-of-a-kind machine specifically designed for the job. That machine took more than 2 years to become operational, 14 months to manufacture, 4 months to ship, and several more months to assemble and prepare. Despite the time, effort, and staggering cost, the project is considered well worth it. Once completed, it will significantly reduce traffic congestion between these two critical cities and improve safety and evacuation capacity during emergencies. So, what exactly is this monumental project? To understand, we need to go back. In the early 20th century, no tunnels or bridges connected Hampton and Norfolk, two cities sitting on opposite sides of the Hampton Roads Harbor in southeastern Virginia. Back then, the only way to cross was by ferry. The Virginia Department of Transportation operated 2 ferry routes, including one from Willoughby Spit to Fort Monroe. At the time, traffic levels were low, around 200 vehicles a day, so the ferry system worked just fine. But as the region's population grew, so did the number of cars. Ferries began falling short. They're unreliable during bad weather and limited in capacity. Plus, increasing the number of ferries would have clogged the busy waterways. A bridge was considered, but that came with its own risks. If a major storm, or worse, an attack, were to bring down a bridge, debris could block the harbor. That would not only disrupt commercial shipping, but potentially compromise national security. That's because Norfolk is home to the largest naval base in the world. In a military conflict, even a temporary shutdown of the harbor could have devastating consequences. The U.S. needed a way to move people and goods across the water without obstructing maritime traffic. The solution came in 1957 with the opening of the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel, HRBT, the world's first bridge tunnel system over a body of water. The key to its design was the use of 2 artificial islands. The southern island, located 1.2 miles from Willoughby Spit, was connected via a causeway to Rip Raps Island, which spans about 15 acres. The northern island was positioned off the coast of Hampton. Bridges connected the islands to the mainland, and tunnel entrances were built into each island. Vehicles passed over the water on bridges, dove beneath the sea through the tunnel, and emerged on the other side, creating a seamless and uninterrupted route. It featured 2 12-foot wide lanes in each direction and initially had tolls, but for commuters, the time saved made the cost worthwhile. Almost immediately, though, traffic began to rise. By 1958, just a year after the tunnel opened, over 6,000 vehicles were using the HRBT daily. The structure, while revolutionary, was quickly being overwhelmed. By 1972, DOT had begun work on a second bridge tunnel system. 4 years later, on the 19th anniversary of the original HRBT opening, a second 2-lane tunnel and bridge system went live. With this addition, tolls were removed, and travel between Hampton and Norfolk became toll-free. But traffic kept growing. By 2008, the HRBT was handling an average of 88,000 vehicles per day. During summer tourist season, it exceeded 100,000, far beyond the design capacity of 77,000. The obvious solution, build another tunnel, was far from simple. In 1992, the Virginia General Assembly tasked DOT with studying the issue. The results were clear. Only a massive, long-term project could solve the congestion problem. Over the next 2 decades, multiple studies examined costs, engineering feasibility, and traffic projections. In 2016, the decision was made. Virginia would embark on its largest highway construction project ever, and one of the most ambitious infrastructure efforts in the entire United States. Construction began in 2020. A year later, Virginia ordered a massive tunnel boring machine, TBM, from Herinicht, a leading manufacturer in Germany. This wasn't just any TBM. Nicknamed Mary, the machine was built with a 46-foot diameter, larger than a 4-story building, along with 56,000 kilowatts of cutter head power and nearly 37,000 Knm of torque. It weighed over 4,700 tons and cost $70 million to build, ship, and assemble. A companion plant, Catherine, was created to manage the slurry, mud, and debris from the boring process. In 2023, Mary began her mission, boring a 1.5-mile underwater tunnel through sediment and rock beneath the harbor floor. She removed over 20 million cubic feet of material and installed 1,191 structural rings to stabilize the tunnel. Unlike Virginia's previous tunnels, which were placed in pre-dug trenches, this one had to be bored deep beneath the water, over 160 feet below the surface. That meant extreme precision. The geology included quaternary alluvial deposits and the sandy Yorktown Formation. It was a first for the state and an immense challenge, but Mary succeeded. On April 17th, 2024, she completed the first of 2 tunnels. It became just the 3rd bored road tunnel of its kind in the U.S. Now, Mary must reverse course. Turning her around is an engineering project in itself and will take about 6 months. By January 2025, she began slowly digging the 2nd tunnel. This leg is expected to finish by 2027, but the project goes far beyond just building 2 tunnels. For one, the northern island needed to be expanded significantly, more than doubling in size, to accommodate the new tunnel connections. The southern island, which served as the launching pad for Mary, is also being enlarged to handle future traffic and operations. Back in 2019, planners realized the southern island had to be paved and upgraded to support more than 200 daily workers before boring could even begin. That prep work was essential. Meanwhile, the HRBT expansion project also includes major improvements to the I-64 corridor. This stretch of highway runs from just west of Mallory Street in Hampton to just east of Patrol Road in Norfolk. A new lane is being added in each direction, and the project includes nearly 100 miles of interstate improvements, with 35 miles consisting of elevated roads and tunnels. Still wondering how this adds up to $4 billion? Let's break it down further. The project also involves rebuilding or expanding 27 bridges, new drainage systems, smart traffic management technologies, lighting upgrades, and other improvements are also part of the plan. So what will the region gain? Once complete, the HRBT will double its capacity from 77,000 vehicles a day to over 150,000. That means fewer delays, smoother commutes, and better travel experiences, especially during the peak tourist season. But there's another, more critical benefit: emergency readiness. Consider what happened on July 2nd, 2009. A severe storm overwhelmed the area's drainage system. A pipe in one of the HRBT tunnels burst, flooding a chamber with hundreds of thousands of gallons of water. Pumps couldn't keep up, and water began backing up onto the road. The tunnel was shut down for nearly 7 hours. This was the day before Independence Day, one of the busiest travel days of the year. With the HRBT closed, drivers had to reroute through the Monitor Merrimack Memorial Bridge Tunnel, MMBT, or the James River Bridge. But those, too, quickly became overwhelmed. A multi-car crash blocked the MMBT, causing a 20-mile backup, and the James River Bridge closed due to storm-related down power lines. In a matter of hours, all 3 major crossings in the region were shut down. Traffic was gridlocked, evacuation routes failed, and this wasn't just a one-off incident. In July 2016, another emergency hit. 2 vehicles collided inside the HRBT, triggering a fire. Emergency services scrambled to contain it. Events like these highlight just how vulnerable the region is when there's no backup infrastructure. The expanded HRBT aims to fix that by doubling capacity, adding modern technology, and enhancing route resilience. The project provides a more reliable lifeline, not just for daily life, but for moments of crisis. It's a bold investment, yes, but for Norfolk, Hampton, and the broader Hampton Roads region, it may be the most important infrastructure project in their history. If you walk along the shores of the Chesapeake Bay today, you might stumble upon a curious scene. People tossing oyster shells into the water or scattering them across the beach. At first glance, it might seem like an odd ritual, maybe even a quirky local tradition. But behind this simple act lies a powerful environmental mission: the restoration of one of America's most iconic and ecologically rich bodies of water. What may look like casual shell tossing is actually part of a massive, coordinated effort to revive the Chesapeake Bay's struggling ecosystem. And at the heart of this effort is the humble oyster. Once upon a time, the Chesapeake Bay was a thriving aquatic paradise. Its waters teemed with life. Quirky blue crabs scuttled along the bottom. Schools of fish, including Atlantic sturgeon and even small sharks, glided through the currents, and dolphins occasionally breached the surface. Underwater meadows of seagrass stretched for miles, supporting this vast network of creatures. Oysters were especially abundant. These bivalves didn't just sit idle on the seafloor. They played a crucial role as natural water filters, cleaning and cycling nutrients throughout the bay. But as human settlement intensified around the bay, this vibrant ecosystem began to collapse under the pressure. Look at a map of U.S. population density, and you'll quickly spot the issue. The Chesapeake Bay watershed is surrounded by some of the most heavily populated areas on the East Coast. Cities like Washington, D.C., Baltimore, Richmond, and Arlington fall within its drainage basin, contributing to the stress on the bay. This dense human footprint has brought with it serious consequences. Industrial discharges, urban stormwater runoff, and widespread agricultural activity have filled the bay's tributaries with pollutants. Two of the most problematic are nitrogen and phosphorus, nutrients that, in excess, become toxic to aquatic ecosystems. In 2022, the Chesapeake Bay program reported that agriculture alone was responsible for nearly half, 48%, of the nitrogen and over a quarter, 27%, of the phosphorus pollution entering the bay. Wastewater treatment plants, though regulated, often struggle to cope with heavy rainfall. When overwhelmed, these systems release untreated waste directly into local waterways. In 2021, two facilities alone, Back River and Patapsco, were responsible for a significant portion of nutrient pollution, 11% of nitrogen and 15% of phosphorus. The excessive nutrients spark explosive algae growth, creating dense blooms that choke the bay's waters. These algae block sunlight from reaching underwater vegetation, and, as they die off, they sink and decompose, sucking oxygen from the water. This process leads to the formation of hypoxic zones, commonly known as dead zones, areas so oxygen depleted that most marine life can't survive. The Chesapeake Bay was one of the first places in the world where a dead zone was formally documented, back in the 1970s. By 2010, these areas were killing off an estimated 75,000 tons of bottom-dwelling organisms annually. Creatures like worms and mollusks that serve as essential food sources for larger species, including the iconic blue crab. What was once a rich underwater landscape has been reduced to lifeless, muddy stretches of seabed. But nature, if given the right help, has a remarkable ability to bounce back. And that's where oysters return to the story, not just as victims of ecological collapse, but as potential heroes of recovery. Oysters are more than just a seafood delicacy. A single adult oyster can filter up to 50 gallons of water a day, removing algae, sediments, and excess nutrients from the water. They form reefs that create vital habitats for fish, crabs, and other marine species. Historically, the bay's oysters were so plentiful they could filter the entire bay's volume in just 3 days. But centuries of overharvesting and disease have decimated their numbers. By 1988, what once took 3 days now took 325. Maryland's oyster reefs, which once spanned 313 square miles, had dwindled to just 58 by 2008. Their decline left a gaping hole in the bay's ecosystem and accelerated the growth of dead zones. Recognizing the oyster's ecological value, restoration efforts have accelerated in recent years. But simply tossing shells into the water doesn't magically bring back the reefs. Oyster shells serve as perfect homes for new oysters, but they must be prepared properly. The Chesapeake Bay Foundation, CBF, plays a central role in this process. Each year, the organization collects around 4,000 bushels of oyster shells, about 90 tons, donated by local restaurants and residents. These shells undergo cleaning and drying before being placed into tanks filled with millions of microscopic oyster larvae. The larvae latch onto the shells, beginning their transformation into adult oysters. Once mature enough, the young oysters are relocated into the bay to rebuild reef structures. Beyond traditional shell seeding, new innovations are also reshaping restoration techniques. One such tool is the reef ball, a concrete dome with holes and a textured surface that mimics natural oyster reefs. Reef balls can either be deployed bare or pre-seeded with larvae. Even when left unseeded, they provide valuable refuge for marine life. These efforts are already producing measurable improvements. In 2010, the Chesapeake Bay's ecosystem health score inched up to 31 out of 100 from 28 just 2 years prior. The trend has continued. By 2023, the bay received a C+ rating, the highest in more than 2 decades. One landmark initiative in this recovery is the Chesapeake Bay program, launched in the 1980s. Its comprehensive plan includes more than 100 specific goals to reduce pollution, protect habitats, and support native species, with oyster reef restoration as a centerpiece. A shining example of this work is Harris Creek in Maryland. There, more than 348 acres of reefs have been successfully restored, with 98% of those meeting the threshold for healthy oyster populations. Across the bay, as of 2023, over 570 acres of oyster reefs have been brought back to life. Restoring oyster reefs isn't just about throwing shells into the water. It's a carefully choreographed operation involving extensive planning, logistics, and scientific monitoring. Each project begins with a detailed blueprint, outlining where reefs will be built, the materials required, the timeline, and how success will be tracked. Shells must be collected, processed, and inoculated with larvae before deployment. Often, this involves transporting tons of material over long distances, a process that demands time and coordination. In some cases, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers assists with reef construction, lending its heavy equipment and manpower. To streamline operations, the Chesapeake Bay Foundation introduced a novel solution, a mobile oyster restoration center. This floating facility, built on 2 interconnected barges, includes 6 tanks that each hold over 845 gallons of water. Here, larvae are introduced to shells or reef balls directly on the river, where they'll eventually be planted. This approach eliminates long-distance transport and doubles the oyster production capacity in Virginia to 15 million per year. The Chesapeake Bay Foundation isn't the only organization involved in this monumental task. The nonprofit Oyster Recovery Partnership, ORP, has emerged as a major player, often working independently, but also collaborating with state and federal programs. Since its founding in 1994, ORP has planted over 10 billion oysters across nearly 3,000 acres of bay waters. Its shell recycling program is the largest in the country, collecting from 200 restaurants and over 70 public drop-off sites across the Mid-Atlantic. To date, they've gathered more than 300,000 bushels, enough to seed around 1.3 billion oysters. What makes these efforts even more impressive is the widespread public involvement. Over 2,000 volunteers have joined ORP's restoration projects, scrubbing shells, building reef balls, and helping to seed oyster larvae. Many volunteers even become citizen scientists, monitoring the health of reefs and gathering data to support long-term conservation. These collective actions, from local seafood restaurants donating used shells to volunteers spending weekends nurturing oyster spat, are building momentum for one of the largest environmental restoration projects in U.S. history. The work is far from over. Climate change, ongoing pollution, and habitat destruction continue to threaten the bay's recovery. But the steady comeback of the oyster population is a beacon of hope. With continued support, innovation, and collaboration, the vision of a clean, vibrant Chesapeake Bay isn't just a dream. It's a goal within reach. So, the next time you see someone tossing an oyster shell into the water, you'll know. It's not just a nostalgic act or a quirky tradition. It's a small but powerful gesture in the fight to bring a damaged ecosystem back to life, one shell at a time. China's agricultural land is shrinking, and fast. That may come as a surprise for a country that's been turning deserts green, tree by tree, acre by acre. But while environmental restoration is a long game, degradation moves quickly. Between industrial development, booming cities, and widespread pollution, China is losing valuable farmland every year. By the end of 2019, China's total arable land measured just under 494,000 square miles. That's a big number on paper, but it's a 6% drop from just a decade earlier, in 2009. The causes are clear: relentless urban expansion, growing industrial demands, inefficient farming practices, and serious environmental degradation. But China's response to this agricultural crisis includes a rather unexpected ally: the crayfish. Yes, crayfish, those small freshwater crustaceans with snapping claws. It sounds strange, even absurd, but these little creatures are playing an outsized role in not just revitalizing farmland, but also in fighting poverty and transforming rural economies. Their journey from exotic novelty to agricultural powerhouse is one of the most fascinating stories in modern farming. The species making waves in China is Procambarus clarkii, commonly known as the red swamp crayfish. It's native to the southern United States, not East Asia. In fact, for most of China's history, crayfish weren't even part of the local ecosystem or cuisine. So how did they get there? The introduction of crayfish dates back to the Second Sino-Japanese War between 1937 and 1945. At the time, crayfish were kept as pets by some Japanese, and many were brought along during the occupation of parts of China. From there, they slowly made their way into China's rivers, lakes, and rice paddies, spreading quietly, unnoticed by most. For decades, they remained relatively obscure, but by the early 1990s, the story started to change. A culinary trend began to take hold. Crayfish dishes, often spicy, stewed, or soaked in wine, gained popularity in restaurants and street stalls across China. The public couldn't get enough. It was a culinary explosion that no one saw coming. Today, China consumes over 90% of the world's crayfish supply. That's more than 1 million tons of crayfish devoured each year. With such massive demand, it was only a matter of time before farming operations ramped up. From small family-run ponds to massive industrial-scale farms, crayfish cultivation has become a national phenomenon. According to China's Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Affairs, crayfish farming was already significant back in 2007, with an annual output of 265,000 tons. Less than a decade later, in 2016, that number had more than tripled to 850,000 tons. Wild-caught crayfish added another 49,000 tons to the total. But the real boom was yet to come. By 2022, China's crayfish production reached a staggering 2.5 million tons. The entire industry was valued at over 369 billion yuan, or about 53 billion US dollars. That's more than the GDP of some small countries. Crayfish were no longer just a culinary trend. They had become a cornerstone of the rural economy. One standout example is Shui County, located in eastern China's Jiangsu province. Known as the crayfish capital of China, Shui has transformed its economy around these crustaceans. By 2025, the county had established 165,000 acres of eco-friendly crayfish farming zones. Over 210,000 residents, more than the population of Salt Lake City, work in crayfish-related industries. Even the crayfish themselves have evolved. Through selective breeding, local farmers developed a line of crayfish that grow larger and reach maturity faster than the original imports. This faster-growing strain can earn farmers an additional 500 yuan per mu, a Chinese land measurement equal to about 1/6 of an acre. It's a significant economic boost in rural areas, where incomes are often limited. In Hubei province, another crayfish stronghold, the city of Xinjiang proudly boasts a 49-foot-tall crayfish statue, the tallest in the world, officially listed in the Guinness Book of Records. The city has become a tourist destination, often called the Eco-City of Crayfish, with restaurants, educational tours, and scenic farming zones all built around the industry. At one processing plant alone in Xinjiang, 500 workers handle 80 tons of crayfish in just a 10-hour shift. Multiply that by the hundreds of facilities scattered across China, and it becomes clear. This is not just a food item, it's a national enterprise. But perhaps the most fascinating development of all is how crayfish are being integrated directly into agriculture, specifically into rice farming. This method is known as integrated crayfish rice farming, and it's proving to be one of China's most promising sustainable farming innovations. The idea is simple yet ingenious. Farmers plant rice in their paddies as usual, but they also dig circular trenches around the fields. These serve as habitats for crayfish. After the rice is harvested, the leftover straw is left in the field, and the paddies are flooded, creating an ideal nursery for young crayfish. The straw provides warmth and shelter during cooler months and eventually decomposes, becoming food for the crayfish. As omnivorous scavengers, crayfish feed on detritus, decomposing plant material, and small aquatic organisms. Their constant foraging keeps the paddies clean and reduces pests. Meanwhile, crayfish waste acts as a natural fertilizer, releasing organic carbon, nitrogen, and potassium, essential nutrients for rice growth. And there's more. When crayfish die, their bodies decompose and further enrich the soil. This cycle significantly reduces the need for chemical fertilizers and pesticides, resulting in cleaner, healthier rice and less environmental pollution. A study published in the Chinese Journal of Ecological Agriculture monitored integrated crayfish rice systems from 2005 to 2015. The results showed that these systems significantly outperformed traditional monoculture rice fields in terms of soil health, biodiversity, and yield. Before 2014, farmers would rotate between crayfish and rice on the same fields, but the introduction of mixed farming changed everything. By 2015, 93% of local farms in participating regions had adopted this integrated approach. According to a 2018 report by the Ministry of Agriculture, crayfish production in one city doubled in a single year, reaching 70,000 tons in 2017. This method is now widely seen as a way to maximize yields, increase rural incomes, and make use of less fertile soil, all without compromising environmental sustainability. As revolutionary as this farming method is, it's not without its downsides. First, growing rice and crayfish together isn't as easy as it might seem. It requires technical knowledge, careful planning, and precise water management. Crayfish are resilient, but they're also opportunistic feeders. If managed poorly, they can start damaging the rice crop they're meant to support. Then there's the issue of land use. To create permanent crayfish habitats, many farmers dig deep trenches and flood fields year-round. This shift from seasonal to permanent flooding reduces the availability of dry land, especially for winter crops like wheat, barley, and rye. That's a serious concern. While rice remains China's primary grain, with 207.5 million tons produced in 2024, wheat is close behind at 140.1 million tons. Wheat is essential for bread, noodles, dumplings, and other staples. Reducing wheat output could strain China's food security, especially as demand continues to rise. One striking example comes from the Yangtze River Basin, where over 1.6 million acres of rice and crayfish fields used to support winter wheat cultivation. Now, much of that land stays underwater year-round, making it unsuitable for wheat farming. And that's just one region. This growing tension between aquaculture and dry farming raises important questions. Can China strike a balance between maximizing income from crayfish and protecting long-term grain supplies? Can integrated systems evolve to support both summer and winter crops? Despite the challenges, China's crayfish experiment has captured the attention of the world. It's a rare example of an invasive species being transformed into a tool for sustainable farming, poverty alleviation, and even national pride. From obscure foreign invader to economic driver, crayfish have changed the face of rural China. They've turned remote counties into thriving communities, reduced reliance on chemical fertilizers, and offered a viable path for regenerating degraded land. Throughout history, deserts have both challenged and inspired human progress. Along ancient trade routes, such as the Silk Road, caravans braved shifting sands to exchange goods, ideas, and culture. Even so, deserts remained a persistent threat, capable of swallowing entire cities and forcing populations to relocate in search of fertile land. In modern-day China, deserts still pose significant challenges, yet they have also become the focus of one of the most ambitious environmental transformations in recent history. Over the past few decades, China has undertaken large-scale projects to halt and even reverse the spread of its deserts. The Gobi and Taklamakan, once considered impenetrable and uncontrollable, have begun to shrink in certain areas due to reforestation programs and innovative water management. At the same time, China's rapid industrialization has placed unprecedented demands on resources like sand and water, sparking further concerns for sustainability. China's deserts comprise a significant portion of its northern and western territories. Historically, nomadic communities coexisted with these arid lands, adapting their lives to seasonal weather patterns. However, as the 20th century brought industrial expansion, pressures on the environment grew. By the 1970s, the Gobi Desert alone was encroaching southward at an alarming pace, threatening settlements and farmland. The Taklamakan Desert, famously nicknamed the Sea of Death, also expanded its dunes into once fertile margins. The Chinese government recognized the urgency of the problem in the late 1970s. By 1978, leaders unveiled a reforestation initiative known as the Three North Shelter Forest Program, also called the Great Green Wall. Influenced by smaller-scale afforestation projects worldwide, policymakers envisioned a vast belt of trees stretching across multiple provinces. The ultimate goal was straightforward: stabilize the shifting sands and protect towns and cities from devastating sandstorms. At the time, many experts questioned whether such a massive tree-planting venture could succeed in regions known for harsh climates and minimal rainfall. Yet the commitment was unwavering. Public and private entities joined forces, marshaling thousands of volunteers and professionals to begin planting tree saplings. Early phases faced difficulties due to low survival rates, harsh winters, and limited irrigation infrastructure. Nevertheless, each obstacle provided lessons, and by the 1990s, tree survival rates had begun to improve. From 1978 until the mid-2000s, the Three North Shelter Forest Program expanded steadily. According to government reports, around 193,000 square miles of land had been afforested by 2009. The program set a long-term horizon, with a target completion date of 2050, indicating the nation's emphasis on persistence and sustained effort. Data released in 2022 suggests a remarkable milestone. The Gobi Desert, once growing by an estimated 3,800 square miles annually in the 1980s, has begun to contract. Researchers calculate it is now shrinking by about 770 square miles per year, a shift often attributed to tree planting, irrigation management, and better land use regulations. Concurrently, the frequency of sandstorms has shown a measurable decrease, offering relief to regions within China as well as neighboring countries like Mongolia, North Korea, and South Korea. Local communities played a crucial role in these successes. Countless individual citizens, motivated by the prospect of safeguarding their homes, took part in planting and maintaining saplings. In one well-publicized example, a couple in Inner Mongolia reportedly spent 4 decades planting 74,000 acres of trees. Their dedication symbolizes a grassroots approach where ordinary people contribute to a monumental national objective. While the Gobi captures much of the media attention, the Taklamakan Desert is equally significant, covering roughly 130,000 square miles. It is China's largest shifting sand desert. Desertification here was so extreme that farmers regularly witnessed dunes advancing onto cultivated plots and roads. In response, authorities launched the Green Belt Project, an extension of the Great Green Wall principle, designed to surround the Taklamakan with a vegetative buffer. This undertaking resulted in a 1,890-mile-long belt circling the desert. Planners introduced hardy plant species such as desert poplars, red willows, and drought-resistant shrubs capable of anchoring the soil. Implementation stretched across 4 decades, concluding major phases in 2022. By that point, approximately 1,715 miles of the belt had been established, with an additional 177 miles left to finish. Local economies benefited as some species planted in the green belt carried agricultural or medicinal value, creating new revenue streams. However, maintaining these desert forests remains challenging, with irrigation systems and continuous monitoring essential to ensuring survival rates. China's leadership also prioritized building infrastructure in previously unreachable desert regions. This serves multiple functions, supporting natural resource extraction, improving transport efficiency, and connecting isolated communities. In the Taklamakan, engineers have constructed 3 major highways across the shifting sands. The oldest, completed in 1995, was primarily intended for oilfield development but quickly opened to the public. 2 additional highways followed in the ensuing years to meet growing travel and logistics needs. Each road presented formidable hurdles, especially regarding constant sand accumulation on the pavement. To combat encroaching dunes, China established a network of small irrigation stations at 2.5-mile intervals along the roads. These stations pump water to desert plants capable of stabilizing the sand. Additionally, workers use specialized nets and fences that slow shifting dunes. According to local highway authorities, annual maintenance can involve removing millions of tons of sand to keep lanes clear. Over time, these measures have dramatically improved road safety and usability. Similar challenges arose with the Lingtuan Railway, a 439-mile track running predominantly through remote desert land. High winds and sand buildup initially caused regular disruptions. To mitigate these issues, rail officials introduced sand barriers, planted vegetation around the tracks, and set up 9 sand control centers for continuous monitoring. Within a year, an estimated 10,000 workers were mobilized and $500,000 spent on track maintenance and vegetation projects. These proactive strategies highlight China's determination to sustain functional transport networks in harsh environments. Alongside reforestation and infrastructure, China has invested in large-scale renewable energy projects in its deserts. Perhaps the most visually striking example is the solar thermal power station near Dunhuang in the Gobi Desert. Its 12,000 mirrors track the sun and reflect concentrated light onto a central tower filled with molten salt. The salt's heat generates steam that drives turbines, producing up to 100,000 kilowatts per hour, enough, by certain estimates, to power 1,100,000-watt light bulbs simultaneously. Solar thermal stations offer an advantage over standard photovoltaic arrays. The molten salt retains heat for hours after sunset, creating a more stable and continuous power supply. Official data suggests this Dunhuang plant can deliver about 390 million kilowatt-hours of electricity annually, displacing fossil fuels and reducing carbon emissions. Looking ahead, the success or failure of these initiatives carries implications beyond China's borders. Nations in Africa and the Middle East, facing similar desertification, often look to China's mixed experiences for inspiration and cautionary tales. As desertification threatens roughly 13 million square miles worldwide, efforts to curb its advance could shape future dialogues on climate adaptation, food security, and biodiversity. China's response to desertification is still unfolding. The 3 North Shelter Forest Program, scheduled to run until 2050, shows that the country views its deserts as long-term, strategic concerns rather than short-term obstacles. Ongoing research into drought-resistant species, water-saving irrigation, and renewable energy may pave the way for new breakthroughs. A country once plagued by expanding deserts has proven that human determination can shape landscapes, often for the better. Yet these strides remain delicate, reliant on careful stewardship of resources and balanced economic strategies. Whether these efforts ultimately yield enduring ecological health or create further unintended consequences will hinge on the continuous refinement of technology, policy, and public engagement. China's history of monumental construction stretches back over 2,000 years, with projects like the Great Wall and the Grand Canal standing as symbols of human tenacity and vision. These early feats, achieved through vast mobilization of manpower and rudimentary tools, shaped trade, territory, and culture across centuries. Today, China's drive to build remains undiminished, yet it has evolved into a highly mechanized, technology-intensive endeavor, From coastal reclamation to high-speed railways spanning thousands of kilometers, the country's approach to infrastructure development has undergone a sweeping transformation. This modern momentum is powered by an arsenal of unprecedented megamachines, each capable of completing projects at speeds and scales that were once unimaginable. In the late 20th century, a series of economic reforms paved the way for rapid industrial growth and an urgent demand for new infrastructure. Between 1980 and 2000, China's urban population nearly doubled, placing immense pressure on traditional building methods. In response, state-owned enterprises and private firms began investing in advanced construction equipment. By the mid-2000s, the country emerged as a leader in large-scale engineering projects, exemplified by landmarks such as the Three Gorges Dam, an undertaking that required sophisticated cranes, tunneling devices, and specialized vessels. These earlier achievements served as a catalyst, prompting further innovations in machinery that would eventually redefine global standards for construction speed and capacity. The Magic Island maker, Tianquan. A key milestone in coastal engineering emerged in 2017, when China unveiled the massive dredging vessel Tianquan. Measuring 140 meters in length and nearly 28 meters in width, it stands among the most powerful dredgers in Asia, with the capacity to excavate and pump up to 6,000 cubic meters of seabed materials per hour. It can fill an Olympic-sized swimming pool in just 20 minutes. This continuous process of suction and deposition has been instrumental in reclaiming land for industrial zones and port expansions, as well as in island-building initiatives. While the technique raises concerns about coastal ecosystems, the vessel's efficiency has accelerated projects that once required years of painstaking labor. The SLJ 932 Iron Monster, revolutionizing bridge construction. Moving from seascapes to spans of concrete and steel, the SLJ 900/32 has become emblematic of China's rapid bridge building capability. Launched in the 2010s, this 91-meter-long machine, often referred to as the Iron Monster, moves on 64 wheels subdivided into 4 sections, each capable of rotating 90 degrees. By aligning itself with pre-existing bridge columns, it lifts and places prefabricated segments with remarkable precision. This approach reduces the need for extensive scaffolding, lowers labor costs, and improves safety conditions. Early estimates suggest the SLJ 932 can place a new span every 24 minutes, potentially completing over 700 bridge segments throughout its service life. As part of the Belt and Road Initiative, these machines facilitate the construction of expansive overpasses that link remote regions, transforming local economies in the process. The 1,000-ton level girder erection machine. For cross-sea high-speed railway projects, China has deployed a 1,000-ton level girder erection machine designed to operate in harsh coastal and oceanic conditions, often measuring over 160 meters in length. This specialized equipment integrates more than 15,000 individual components. Its standout feature lies in its endurance, as it can withstand high-velocity winds and corrosive saltwater environments. This capability enables construction to progress with minimal downtime, even during challenging weather. By speeding up segment placement and eliminating certain manual steps, the machine exemplifies how China's construction sector merges size with cutting-edge technology. Many infrastructure planners point to these innovations as contributors to the consistent expansion of the country's high-speed rail network, already the largest of its kind in the world. Fast-tracking railway development, the CYP 500. High-speed rail forms a critical component of China's blueprint for economic growth, linking distant cities and fostering trade. At the heart of this vision are machines like the CYP 500, a rapid track-laying system capable of laying 2 kilometers of railway track in a single day. Older methods might achieve a few hundred meters in the same time frame, making this device a major breakthrough for on-site efficiency. Each unit is equipped with synchronized cranes that hoist rails and concrete sleepers, positioning them with precision before sealing them into place. These systematic steps reduce manual labor, enhance safety, and keep projects on schedule. by enabling quick completion of tracks through mountainous and urban regions alike. The CYP 500 has allowed China's railway network to reach over 40,000 kilometers of high-speed lines as of the early 2020s. Going underground, CRCHI tunneling machines. China's focus on connectivity also extends below the surface. Tunneling machines produced by the China Railway Construction Heavy Industry Corporation, CRCHI, often reach diameters of up to 15 meters, making them among the largest tunnel borers worldwide. They combine impressive torque, sometimes exceeding 40,000 Newton meters, with advanced laser guidance. This setup enables simultaneous excavation and lining of tunnel walls, minimizing potential collapse and erosion. In urban centers such as Beijing, Shanghai, and Guangzhou, these machines have delivered new subway lines ahead of tight deadlines, alleviating congestion for millions of commuters. In mountainous provinces, similarly configured tunnel borers drill through challenging rock formations to pave the way for expressways and high-speed rails. These feats underscore the integral role of mechanized tunneling in China's broader infrastructure strategy. Heavy lifting, XCMG 4,000-ton crawler crane. For projects requiring massive lifts, like placing large prefabricated components in power plants or erecting wind turbines, China has turned to crawler cranes with previously unthinkable capacities. The XCMG 4,000-ton crawler crane exemplifies this, capable of lifting loads equivalent to 4,000 average sedans at once. Standing at over 100 meters in height when configured for maximum lift, it leverages a robust lattice boom and complex counterweight system. Its ability to place massive sections with millimeter precision has redefined how engineers approach plant construction and industrial assembly. By making it feasible to pre-build large modules off-site, the crane reduces assembly times and improves quality control, benefiting projects that emphasize safety, like nuclear facilities. Zoomlion ZC 32,000, another giant in the crane world. Another record-setting crawler crane is the Zoomlion ZC 32,000, with a 3,200-ton lifting capacity and a maximum height of around 178 meters. It competes on a global scale for heavy lifting applications. Equipped with modular design features, this crane can be swiftly assembled on-site, which is an important advantage for large-scale energy developments, such as wind farm installations and petrochemical expansions. Operators can maneuver multi-ton components with millimeter-level accuracy, a critical factor for delicate equipment like reactor vessels. This precision also reduces the risk of workplace accidents. Since its debut, the ZCC 32,000 has become a mainstay for large contractors, illustrating the growing demand for high-capacity lifts in China's evolving industrial landscape. In pushing the limits of engineering, China's construction boom offers a glimpse into a future in which large-scale building may be measured not only by speed, but by the broader impacts it leaves on communities and the planet.